Today is Friday, March 7th, 2014, and we are in Bellingham, Massachusetts. This tape is part of the Bellingham Mendon Veterans Oral History Project. My name is Marjorie Turner Holman. Our cameraman is Eric Fisher of ABMI Cable 8 TV. We are privileged to have with us today Loretta Lopez of Bellingham, Massachusetts. Could you please tell us your full name and birth date, Loretta?
My name is Loretta Lydia Lopez, born Perrin.
And your birth date?
My what?
Birth date.
Oh, July 27, 1932.
Thank you. And what is your hometown, Loretta?
Gloucester, Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I was born and brought up. I've been living in Bellingham for about 50 years now.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay. Well, tell us about the members of your family who have served in the military, Loretta.
I have an older brother who was in the Navy, and then I have another brother, younger than him, was in the Air Force, and I also have a sister who was in the Air Force.
There's a picture of you and your brother, is that right?
That is my brother.
Yeah, both of you in uniform.
Not the oldest one, the second one.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Very nice.
We were both in at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on I had a sister, younger sister, my youngest sister, she was in the Air Force.
Mm-hmm. And what made you decide to join the Air Force?
Well, we had a representative for the Air Force come to the high school. And after listening to him, I really had no plans to go to college. And it sounded like a pretty good choice for me. And so I went with that. And my mother had 7 children, so she sent the first 2 to college, but I guess it was hard to send the rest of us to college. But
okay, and so you were how old when you joined?
18 years old.
Mm-hmm. Right after you graduated?
The day after. I graduated on Sunday and I left Monday morning. I remember my mother having a cup of coffee with me. And then in those days we didn't do a lot of riding, so I had to walk down to the train station, which was okay because I was used to walking. And then I left from Gloucester, Mass, went to Boston, and from Boston to San Antonio, Texas.
Wow. Okay. And tell us, where did you go to boot camp? And please tell us about it.
Went to basic training in Lackland Air Force Base. I was there for, I think it was about...
Is that right there?
Yep.
That's you.
3 months training there. And from there I went to school, Cheyenne, Wyoming, for supply technician. And then I got my final assignment after school back to San Antonio, but to another base, Randolph Air Force Base. And I was stationed at Randolph for 2 years. And then I left Randolph from there and went to Germany.
Okay. Well, while you were in Texas, there were some fun things that happened. Could you tell us about some of them, and including when you were a queen?
I worked as a supply sergeant, not sergeant, in the supply office, and I used to work in an office where this gentleman who was in charge of the office was also handling the looking for a queen for the float downtown San Antonio. It was a fiesta they had celebrating the Texas and Mexican, Texas and Mexican War. So I was chosen queen, and at that time, in order to get my votes, people would have to pay a penny a vote. And so, and anyway, I won and I became the queen for the float. And had the week off, and I had a white uniform that there was an officer's uniform that they allowed me to wear. And
you were not an officer at that
I was
time.
not an officer, no. At that time I had 2 stripes, and I got a promotion that week also. And it was great. I had never done anything like that before, so I enjoyed being on the float and waving to everybody. My mother and father came down. They stayed for the whole week, so it was pretty exciting.
Okay. I think this is one of the people when is
Yeah,
that your basic training, or?
That girl, she was from Manchester, Massachusetts. I believe her name was Shirley. You had asked me about a comedian in the unit, but
right.
actually the comedian was the girl that I left with 5 girls from Gloucester, Mass, and she was so funny. I can remember her being just so funny. She would mimic movie comedians. She would tell jokes, and I just always wondered whatever happened to her, so I always thought she would end up on stage somewhere. So
Funny.
I haven't seen her, but I sure would like to see her today.
Do you remember anything that she did, any kind of practical jokes?
No, not exactly, no. But I do remember she was just a funny person.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we have a picture of you when you were the queen in San Antonio. Because I think, didn't you say you had a car for the week or something?
It was a staff car. I didn't drive it myself.
Okay, but
yeah, that's the white uniform, my 2 stripes.
Oh, okay, that was your 2, is that where they gave you the extra stripes, or?
I believe I had 1 stripe at the time, yeah, and then I was promoted to let's see, Airman First Class. No, that wasn't Airman First. PFC and Airman Second Class, I guess.
Okay.
Can't even remember the ranks back then. But at any rate, yeah, they gave me that white uniform, which is very nice, and a staff car that they drove me downtown for the parade, and downtown to the hotel to visit my folks. And it was pretty exciting. I really felt like a queen.
How fun. Okay, and after San Antonio, where were you stationed?
I got an assignment to Germany, so I left there for Camp Kilmer, New Jersey, which is a port of embarkation. And so I left there, and I think I was there for about 3 weeks. Why I was there so long, I don't remember, but by the time I got out of there, it was 3 weeks, and flew to Germany, and then I was driven to Erding Air Force Base in Germany, which I was there for, I think, a total of 16 months.
Okay. And talk to us about some of the duties that you did when you were...
I was a supply technician in the beginning, and then later on I changed over to being a procurement clerk. And that was an interesting job. I enjoyed that.
There's a picture of you, not really, upper part is in uniform.
Yeah, that was...
You're wearing blue jeans in that picture.
Right, I have blue jeans because that was in the barracks. We were just fooling around taking pictures, but they did distribute the helmets. That was my fatigue jacket. Those were actual clothes that I were issued. And well, I think we were just fooling around taking pictures in the barracks. And yeah, we did have to have the helmets, and yeah.
But what are some of the jobs that you did? You know,
As a supply sergeant?
Sure. What were some of your duties?
Well, in procurement, I worked as a clerk, and I would log in the paperwork when it came in. Can't remember exactly what the paperwork was, but I logged in a lot of orders, and I also opened up bids in the conference room.
Bids?
Or whenever they had jobs to do on the base, they would send in bids, and And I actually would assist the sergeant that was in there, and we would open up the bids and look for the lowest bids. So.
You told me something about driving forklifts.
Oh, that was at Randolph Air Force Base. Yeah, it was. I worked in an open warehouse where they carried paint, dope, lacquer, cement. So the warehouse itself was just surrounded by like a chain link fence, but the office itself was inside. And so I had an airman come by one day that wanted to pick up, he had paperwork for a 55-gallon drum of gunk, which is a cleaner they use to clean the airplanes off on the flight line. And there was a civilian worker there who was gone at the time, and we were waiting for him to come back. But it was such a long time that I just told the kid that I could drive the forklift. So I got on the forklift and lifted up the pallet with the gunk on it and put it on his truck and said, "You're all set."
Now, how did you learn to drive a forklift?
Oh, I think that one of the civilian workers there showed me how to do it. It's not really that hard, just a couple of sticks that go back and forth.
And you have to know how to drive.
Well, there was one for lifting the forklift up and down, and then there was one for actually driving it around. So, yeah. So.
Okay. Well, tell us about serving in Germany.
Germany was a great assignment. I really enjoyed the countryside over there, the culture. It was just a great place. I worked as, like I said in the beginning, a supply technician, and I just basically worked in the office there. And then after that was, I would be picked up in the mornings to drive. That area that I worked was an area actually outside of the installation that I worked at. And so I would be picked up in a 6x, which is a truck, and taken out there in the mornings. And it was all right. I enjoyed that out there, but I ended up working in procurement after that. But
well, you had opportunity. You described to me about helping pilots who needed to have airtime.
Oh, that was they would put an ad on the WAF bulletin board because these pilots needed to get their hours in. I guess they had to have so many hours a month.
And okay.
Yeah, that was
you flew
a cargo,
in a plane?
C-47 cargo plane.
And you flew in a plane like that?
Yeah, that's the plane I flew in.
Oh my goodness.
That is the plane that I flew in.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a cargo plane. And they had to get their hours in, so they would fly to different areas. So they needed to take, for whatever reason, they needed to take these flight attendants with them. And so, they would put a little ad on the bulletin board, and anyone that wanted to go could just sign up. So I got a chance to go to Liverpool, England, which was really great. But, it just gave some of the WAFs a chance to fly to different places. So it was a good assignment.
Where did you sit on the plane? What did it look like?
They didn't have actual seats. They were like off to the side because it was carried cargo.
Right.
So they were like seats off to the side of the plane other than the pilot seats in front. Yeah.
No windows?
Can't remember where they, no, I don't think there was any windows in there, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was it dark?
Huh?
Was it dark while you were flying?
No, I don't remember. That wasn't kind of on my mind. Not really.
Okay. Noisy?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But I could always see out the window, where the pilot's the front of the plane.
Yes.
That was pretty visible. There was no door that you closed there. I don't think there was a door, but I could see out that window right there, yeah. So.
I'm guessing you were able to do that on free time, like days off. It wasn't that you could be on duty.
Yeah, I think I did that on weekends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Nope, because you had to do your job no matter what.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, talk to us about being a woman in the military and how things were for you and how things have changed for women.
Well, let's see. When I was in Germany, that's where I met my future husband, okay? I went with him. Another thing I used to do before I get to your question was, because this is going to lead up to your question. I used to take the mail from the procurement office in a Jeep down to the Deutsches Bundespost, which is the post office. And when I went through the main gate, the sergeant on the main gate used to flirt with me all the time. And actually he ended up asking me out, and I went out with him, and 3 months later we got married. So after I got married, later on when I got pregnant, I could wear my uniform as long as it could fit, but after it, got too tight, I had to get out of the service. And that's one of the changes, which is what your original question was. Now, you can stay in the service because they have maternity uniforms. And I met a girl in Gloucester, Mass. Once who was visiting my mother, and she was in the service. She was in the Army, and she had 2 children and no husband. And I said, gee, can you stay in the service if, you don't have a husband, you have 2 children? And she said, yeah. She said, as long as you can do your job, and you have someone that can take care of your children, as long as you can get around that. So that's one of the changes. Back then, they didn't have maternity uniforms. I still haven't seen a maternity uniform, but that's what she told me. But that is one of the changes. And also, I believe today, I don't think back then there were women flying helicopters. Now when I look on the news, I see women, and I believe I've seen some stories about women flying helicopters. So women are being treated a lot different today. They didn't do as many things. I know there were women pilots back then. I do know that. But I think women are more up in the front lines.
Would you have liked to fly a helicopter?
Would I have liked to fly? Sure, I would have. Yeah, that would have been a great thing to do, yeah. I have actually flown a plane once, but that's another story. It was one of those C-47s, but that's another story, so.
We're right here. We're telling
Yeah,
stories.
well,
I'm ready.
I shouldn't go into that.
Were you not supposed to fly it? Or?
Well, I did sit in the co-pilot seat, and there's an indicator there that where the wings, the horizon line, you have to keep your wings on the horizon line. And he showed me how to, keep the plane level with that, and every time you turn the wheel, you could see where the wing would go down, and then on the other side where the wing would go down, and also when you put the wheel forward, the plane goes down and brings it back. So yeah, I did do that.
We won't name any names.
Yeah.
That's fine.
I don't even remember what his name was, but at any rate, yeah, that was exciting.
He didn't let you land it.
Oh no, that was just up over some hayfield. I remember looking down and seeing the fields.
Where?
Dunkirk, if you want to know exactly where that was. Dunkirk.
Okay.
Just before Dunkirk, yeah. Because we were flying to England, which is over the channel. Yeah.
Okay, well, after you left the Air Force, what sort of activities did you take on?
Well, my husband, I had my daughter, Linda, and after she was 9 months old, he got an assignment back to the United States. So he was transferred to Florida, Tyndall Air Force Base, and we were there for like 3 years. That was a good assignment for him because he originally came from Florida, and we weren't too far from his mother and his brother and his cousins. So in that respect, he got a chance to visit his family. So we were there for 3 years. It was a good assignment in Florida. And he was an air policeman, so that's what he did there.
Okay.
And then after Florida, he got an assignment to go to France for 3 years. and I followed him 3 months later because he had to get housing over there for us. And so I followed him 3 months later.
You talked about being a hospital volunteer.
Oh yeah,
Not
that
sure
was
where
when,
that was.
and that the rest of that story is when we got to France, we had government housing, and then I did end up working well, first of all, I did take a French course through the Red Cross so that I could go shopping and I could communicate somewhat with French people.
Mm-hmm.
We did end up living on the economy there too for a while. And
I
which
don't
is
know what you mean by living on the
living
economy.
downtown in the town.
Oh, okay, off base.
Yeah, off base. And I did work as a Red Cross volunteer as a gray lady. And that was kind of like the candy stripers, which were the younger kids. And as a gray lady, I would wear a uniform, which was gray, and go to the hospitals, and I would distribute books and ask if anybody needed anything. And that was as a gray lady in the hospital. So that was a good assignment. I enjoyed that. I did that for 1 year. And I also worked at a doctor's office as a volunteer, helping the patients get ready for the doctor.
In France?
Yeah, that was in Châteauroux, France, in the American hospital on the base, yeah.
Okay. Well, once you returned to the United States after you were out of the service and you came back to the U.S. to stay, talk to us about what sort of things you did. You have some interesting work history.
Well, after France, my husband got an assignment in Boston, Mass, at the Fargo building, and he was a detective at the Fargo building. There was a military office there, so that's where he worked. So we ended up buying a house in Bellingham, Mass, and I'm sure you've heard of it. While I was, let's see, I actually, about a year or 2 years, it was in 1962, I think it was maybe about a year later, I decided to work. So I took the civil service exam, and I got a job at U.S. Army Natick Laboratories, and I worked there actually for like 27 years. But that was a good assignment, and then from there, I actually went to work for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife in Newton, Mass, and they left there. It went to Hadley, Mass in 1990, and so that was when I retired. But I also worked as a volunteer for the National Ski Patrol in Kleinersbrook in Franklin, Mass.
Before we get to the ski patrol, I want you to tell me a little bit more about Natick Labs.
Oh, Natick Labs was I worked there as a clerk typist in the beginning, and that was all research for the soldier.
For the U.S. Army?
U.S. Army Natick Laboratories. It was research for the soldier, and I worked in the clothing. Actually, it wasn't the clothing labs that I worked in first. It was in, see, it's like an administrative section that where I did a lot of typing. I was working as a clerk typist then in a typing pool. And then I left the typing pool and I got a job at Natick Labs in a chemistry office. So I worked it was kind of in the clothing labs, but in the chemistry office. And I worked as a secretary to the chief of the chemistry office. And
the chemistry office did what? What were
chemical warfare.
Okay. That wasn't the food where they did the frozen foods and stuff.
Excuse me?
I thought Natick Labs did stuff with meals ready to eat.
With what?
Food.
Oh yeah, there's a food laboratories, but that was the clothing laboratories that I worked in. I did a lot of taste testing in the food laboratories.
And how was it?
That was great, yeah. They would ask volunteers, that was another volunteer thing that I did. They would ask lots of the lots of volunteers, like people that work there, to taste test the different foods, like the food that they make for the astronauts. It was all tested there. It was designed and tested there, but they actually sent off to have it made in different locations.
And how did it taste?
Some was good. Some you had to, be honest about it. I remember one time I did test lemon yogurt, and they would give me a big bowl of it. And I think after I got done with that, testing that lemon yogurt, I don't think I ever ate it again. It was okay, but after having it for so much of it.
You had to eat the whole bowl?
Oh, I ate most of it. Yeah, it was interesting. I probably taste tested 2,500 times. I mean, I did a lot of taste testing there. Yeah. Well, they would call you, and ask you to come over. But after working in the clothing labs, then I put in for a job with there was another tenant organization at U.S. Army Natick Laboratories, and it was came under the Surgeon General, and it was the U.S. Army Institute of Environmental Medicine, and they did a lot of research on soldiers in. They tested the clothing in the wind tunnels, which they had right there. They tested them in the big chambers they had, altitude chambers. So I worked actually in supply there. I didn't get, involved in the actual research studies. But I got to see them because I used to take the cylinder inventory. They had a lot of gas cylinders in the institute, and I would have to take the inventory. So I had to walk around the whole institute. And when I did, I could see all these studies going on. So it was a pretty interesting place to work, yeah. So
there was something else that you were starting to talk about with the ways that you give back to the community. You were mentioned about the ski patrol.
Oh yeah, I worked at as a ski patroller at Klein Innsbruck ski area in Franklin, Mass. And I would work there.
There you are on skis.
Yeah, that's it right there. It was a great place to work. It really was. You had to have advanced first aid in order to work as a patroller. And then they would take you on the slopes and teach you how to use the toboggan.
For the purpose of?
Bringing a injured victim down. Yeah, and it was pretty interesting. I actually worked there for 25 years. I worked actually 1 weekend a month and 1 night a week. But I was there a lot more than that. Every time I went there, I was, work as a patroller. So I took some of my training at Wachusett Mountain. We took actually mountaineer training at Wachusett. We even had to learn to deliver a baby. Yeah, I never could figure that one out. Who's going? I mean,
slopes.
I don't think a woman having a baby would be skiing on the slopes. but I could never figure that. But we had to take the training. So, it was a great time in my life.
How did you learn to ski?
I learned to ski when I was 15 years old. My father gave me a pair of Northland Hickory skis. And I remember for Christmas, because they were under the bed. I wasn't supposed to see them, but that was one of my Christmas presents. And I can remember going out, and we lived on a little hill, and at night when it was snowing, going out there and trying to teach myself how to ski. And I also actually joined a couple of ski clubs. One was the Catholic Youth Organization, the CYO. I joined that ski club, and we would actually take trips and ski, like Sunapee, and to some of the ski areas up north. I also joined the Cape Ann. You've heard of Cape Ann Ski Gulls. So I was a member of the Cape Ann Ski Gulls. And I can remember racing with them. And not that I was a great racer or anything, but it was fun. It was a fun thing to do. And I did a lot of skiing in high school. But then, when I joined the service, I didn't ski again until I came back to Bellingham.
Really?
So I started getting into skiing again. And I skied till I was about just a couple of years ago. I'm 81 now. I skied till I was 79 years old. And I still feel like I could go out there and ski, but I'm not so sure it would be a good idea. Maybe my bones are too brittle, but I get good reports on my bones, but I still feel like, and I feel like someday I probably would get out there and ski again. I love it. I'm always watching ski movies. Last night I watched the ski movie with Alan Ladd, and that movie went back to 1941. I'm sure you remember Alan Ladd. Do you remember Alan Ladd? Yeah. And it was all about skiing. I think they were members of the 10th Mountain.
So it was a military type
Right,
movie?
yeah. They wore all white clothing. And it was just last night I watched that. It was
funny.
pretty neat, yeah.
You have another interest that it would be fun for you to talk to us
Yeah,
about.
sailing.
And that's about sailing, yes.
I've been sailing for over 40 years, and I've been a member of a sailing club for
Now
40
there's
years.
a picture of a special
Oh
boat.
yeah, that was a little sailboat that I actually built. It was a Cape Cod Frosty. And I used to work for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and there was a gentleman there that I used to talk to about sailing all the time. And he got transferred to California. And he had this kit that he bought. It was a Cape Cod Frosty. And they actually sail these little boats in the winter down at the Cape. And he gave me the kit. And I like woodworking a lot, and so I decided to take on that challenge. And I actually built that boat in the back of my yard. It was called the stitch and glue method, and you stitched it together with 12 gauge copper wire, 3 inches, and it was just like stitching the pieces together. You twist it on the inside of the boat, no, on the outside of the boat, and then you would put like a bondo, which is bonding is, I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yeah.
They use it on
For cars.
cars, yeah. And the seams, and then sand it all down. And then, anyway, it took me 90 hours to build that boat. And it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. And I actually had a birthday party for my mother and a retirement for me in Gloucester. And I brought that boat down there. And we actually had a christening in Gloucester Harbor.
That's what the picture was.
Yeah, that was the christening,
Was
yeah.
the launch of your boat.
Yeah, but I have been sailing for 40, other than just that boat. I do have my own sailboat. It's 15 feet. It's in my backyard right now, and I sail it in the summer. But I mostly go sailing with the sailing club. And most of my sailing is done on 27 to 42 feet. And I have a friend whose husband has a bad back, and they own a 27-foot J boat, and it's in Marion, Mass. And I usually sail down there most of the time. But I have been sailing off of Marblehead. In Maine, I went out on a schooner once for a whole week, just about 5 years ago, for a whole week. That was a great trip, right in Maine. And
How did you learn to sail?
my father used to take me down on the wharfs when I was a little kid growing up in Gloucester. He used to point out all the sails on the schooners that were coming in the harbor, and I think that's probably where I got my love, my interest for sailboats. Yeah. I can still remember standing on that wharf. Those harbors used to freeze then, too. I don't know if they freeze now, but I think maybe this last winter they might have. Yeah, we had some pretty cold winters, but anyway, in the summertime, he used to show me those boats. He used to point out all the sails.
Could you tell us some positive experiences that you've gotten from your military service? Loretta?
Well, I enjoyed being in the military. I really got to do a lot of traveling, saw a lot of the countries, a lot. I did wherever I was stationed, I would always venture out and look at the surroundings, countryside, you know.
Tell us about where you went.
Oh, where have I been?
Well, while you were in the military, you said you...
Well, when I was stationed in Germany, we went to the Netherlands. I remember going there for 10 days on vacation with my husband. We went to Spain for 20 days. Mm-hmm. Then we traveled for 30 days all over Europe. We went to Austria, Italy, Switzerland. I've actually been to Switzerland. There was a restaurant we used to eat in Switzerland, and I've been back to that restaurant about 3 times on my own. I took my daughter when she graduated from high school. I took her to Europe for 6 weeks, and I planned that trip for 3 years. During my lunch, I took Arthur Fomer's book on travel on $12 a day, and I actually traveled on $12 a day in Europe, and I made up a photo album with all the receipts and how much money I spent. 6 weeks in Europe, and it cost me, between my daughter and myself, $3,500. That's all it cost. That was including the rental of a car.
What year would this have been? Do you
That was in
remember?
1973, and we went skiing.
You did?
In the summertime,
Ah.
on July 12th. I remember the date. Yeah, yeah, Passo del Stelvio in Italy. We went skiing.
Yeah.
I can remember coming down from the mountain in our long johns. Went to Venice, and we were so warm. but I can still remember it was pretty cold up there in July. Yeah.
Is there anything else that you'd like to share before we wrap up this interview?
Well, I enjoyed my time in the Air Force. It was a great time in my life. Will always be with me. And if anyone ever wants to join the service, I think it was just a great thing to do, and I would advise them to go in if that's what they want to do.
All right.
Yeah, it was a great time in my life, and I'll never forget it.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and thanks to ABMI for their support of this project. Thanks to the Bellingham Cultural Council for their support of this project. And we will be sending copies of all these interviews to the Library of Congress to become part of the permanent record there. And any veteran who has ties to Bellingham or Mendon is encouraged to contact us to arrange to be interviewed here at ABMI Cable 8. Please call ABMI Cable 8 508-966-3234 or email me, Marjorie Turner Holman, at marjorie@marjorieturner.com. The phone number for the station and my email will be in the credits at the end of the program. Each person's story is unique. We'd love to hear it.
Thank you.